Hey guys, this is DuperGames420 here, back at it again with yet another figure review. And this time we're going to be taking a look at the San Diego Comic-Con 2013 exclusive version of Piccolo. Let's take a look at the box, which I don't have. So as far as Piccolo's box is concerned, it's relatively similar to the original version of Piccolo. The front of the box has some dot matrix art of Piccolo standing with his arms folded and his cape on. On the front it says S.H.Figuarts Piccolo Special Color Edition. It also has the Dragon Ball Z, Bandai Machinations, all that stuff on the front. On the top it says S.H.Figuarts Piccolo Special Color Edition, and I believe behind that it says Special Beam Cannon. On the side of the box there's a picture of Piccolo with his arms crossed and he's staring at you menacingly. And on the back there are a couple action shots of Piccolo. Can't exactly remember it off the top of my head, but I remember there were also some blurbs. And then on the other side of the box it's just a continuation from the front, and then on the bottom there's some printed bluefin crap nobody cares about and Piccolo Special Color Edition. Anyways, let's move on to the figure himself. So as far as comparisons are concerned, Piccolo himself is roughly the same height as the original figure, considering they both have the exact same mold as each other. But for the sake of keeping this review somewhat consistent with my other ones, here he is next to Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku, currently the cheapest one in the line, and Super Boo. Here Piccolo is next to the other two releases from 2013 that I have, the Figuarts Krillin, or Krillin as I used to call him, and Frieza. Here he is next to the San Diego Comic-Con 2011 Goku and the 2012 Gohan. As you can see here, Piccolo is pretty close to being in scale here. Piccolo should be a little taller, but Piccolo certainly gets the job done. And out of all these three figures, Piccolo is by far most affordable out of the bunch, and he's the one that I ended up paying the least for in the end. So here Piccolo is next to the original manga version of him, released in 2010. Well, originally released in 2010. This is the 2016 reissue that he's standing next to. And to be honest with you, I really like the SDCC one. I absolutely adore the coloring on him. Everything just contrasts. It feels so vivid, full of life. The figure is truly a work of art. Truth be told, there are a plethora of differences between this and the manga version. For instance, we'll get into it later, but the SDCC one has much more rubbery and malleable plastic, while the manga one has far more hard and brittle plastic. I actually have the 2014 reissue of him, and one of the antennae broke off on this head. And even though the SDCC one has more rubbery antennae, I would strongly advise against messing with them at all cost. But there are a few more differences between these two, and I'll get them up close to point just all the nitty gritty out. So here the two Piccolos are up close. You can see the obvious, this one has a noticeably more dark green to his skin, and this one is much lighter. The arms on the SDCC one are pink on those weird little muscle pad things, and the original is yellow. Paint on the original is not exactly perfect. The SDCC one has a much more matte finish and put next to the original. It's very good. There's a red sash on the original and a blue one on the SDCC version. The boots are more of a beige yellow on the original and more of an orange on the SDCC one. Let's move on with the rest of the review. Moving on to the paint and sculpt of Piccolo here, and this is probably the highest point on the figure. The paint and sculpt work is beautiful all throughout this figure. The first thing that caught my eye when I first looked at him, the colors contrast very well with each other. You can see they use a nice light pink for the muscle pads and some dark greens for the arms, which looks very good. The blue of the sash is very bright and it pops when put with the dark purples of the gi. The same thing can be said with the sort of moderate orange for his boots. The face itself looks very good. There's a little black mark on the eye there, but it's barely noticeable. Antennae are rubbery on this one, but again, don't push your luck. The neck is nicely sculpted and shaded. The shading does bring the colors out in the neck a bit better. The colors don't exactly continue fluently throughout the figure, I guess you could say. There's some shading in the muscles of his chest there, and that really brings it out, which looks very good. Some red and pink bleeding on the arms here and there, but it's not exactly the end of the world. You're barely going to notice it when he's on display. There's a lot of shading all throughout the arm, and I'm really digging that. There's some shading on the back of his arm, which also looks very good. The legs are sculpted well, and the foot, well, the boot is nicely painted. It's a nice orange with some dark browns painted in the sculpted indents. There is some pink painted at his ankle, just where it is exposed. Overall, the paint is very good. The sculpt work is very good, albeit reused. Overall, the figure itself looks very, very impressive. So anyways, let's move on to his accessories. Here are most of Piccolo's accessories. Mine did not come with the piece for his crossed arms, but that's hardly a loss because I've already got the manga version, 2 copies to be specific, so I can always just use that part from the manga version. But as you can see, Piccolo, while he does come with a decent array of his stuff, it's not exactly a lot. But for what he did come with, it was definitely pretty cool. Like I showed off, he has the stern face and closed fists on, but as far as the other heads go, here's Piccolo's looking off to the side head. There's a lot of veins popping on this head. Looks very, very good. The shading is definitely intense on this face, but it's definitely pretty good as well. The eyes are painted clean, and there's not really much to say other than the teeth could have been cleaned up a little bit here and there. Again, it's really a minor detail that normal people won't notice. Only spuds like myself would notice. Here is the last head that Piccolo comes with. The stern head with his turban on. And the turban itself is sculpted very well. It does look like actual cloth. There's a seam line going down the middle, which is a bit noticeable from some angles, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. The paint up top is definitely a bit glossy, but it's not bad. And the face itself is once again painted pretty damn good. There's quite a bit of shading, and I am a fan of that. As far as the other hands are concerned, Piccolo also comes with a Makanka Sapo, or special beam cannon hand, with a vein popping out of the back there, and some very nicely painted nails. The nails themselves could have been painted a little bit better because they don't line up exactly with the line of the sculpt, but it's not terrible. Again, you're barely going to notice it. And like I said, the plastic is very malleable. You can see I'm not really putting a lot of force into moving those. Next up, Piccolo comes with some grapply hands, again very nicely painted. There is a base shading of dark green, which then fades into the lighter green highlights at the fingertips, which looks very good. And once again, he has the white nails and some veins popping in the back of his hands. Here are Piccolo's open palm blasting hands, which also look very good. You can see there a lot of wrinkles in his fingers, and the base color starts off as a dark green and once again fades into a lighter green, which does look very nice. And the sculpt work overall looks very good, and the paint is very clean. I am pleased. Like I said, the plastic is malleable. Again, wouldn't push my luck with it. What Piccolo figure would be complete without these, his crossed arms. You can see here the shading is once again very well applied. There are some highlights at the elbows, which looks good. Paintwork is very clean. There's a little bit of bleeding here and there, but it's not as bad as some other figures in the line that I have. It's certainly the cleanest pair of crossed arms that I have, bar from my Friezas, because there's literally just cast the plastic in white for the original, add a bit of shading, and then paint some pearlescent purple onto it. But these are very complex, and to be completely fair with you, I'm surprised that they were able to capture all this detail and still maintain a clean paint job all throughout. This is definitely one of Tamashii Nation's better releases. Alright, so here Piccolo is with his cape and turban on, and I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite looks for Piccolo. It's simply because of how well the colors contrast with each other. You can see the very bright white of his cape contrast with the darker colors of his body. It just looks very nice. Let me turn to his back here. You can see there's some nice shading going throughout the cape. The original one was definitely a lot lighter than this, but this definitely looks good. If it is a little misplaced in some spots, I think it would have looked better if it was painted on the wrinkles of his cape as opposed to just shading it, but it still looks pretty damn good. And this does hinder his articulation a little bit, particularly moving the arms outward. You cannot do that with the cape on. Moving them forward, kind of restricted. A lot of people say it's really hard to get this piece or the crossed arm piece into there. I don't have that problem. I barely have that problem. So here's what you do. You just align the peg holes up with the pegs and boom, slots in. Easy as that. It is pretty much a non-issue on the SDCC one. That said, this is just my copy of the figure. It could vary from unit to unit, but on my particular copy, it is pretty much a non-issue. Anyways, let's move on to Piccolo's articulation. Alright, so as far as the articulation is concerned, this is where a lot of my warnings with this figure come into play, particularly in the head. Now, when moving the head, do not grab Piccolo by the antennae. Do not grab him by the face. That is how you break the antennae. If you do that, I am not responsible if you break it. What I recommend you do is hold the top of his head and hold whatever ear your hand is holding it with, and move the head like that. And by doing that, he does get a pretty decent range of movement. He does look up quite far. Down, not the greatest. Does go side to side a little bit and can go full 360, but I'm not going to risk it. The neck can help with the downward movement, as with the neck, Piccolo looks down quite far and can move his head off to the side pretty well. The head itself is on the standard ball hinge. I'll just pull the head off real quick to show you. It's pretty much the swivel that comes out of the neck and has a peg attached to it. That peg connects this piece to it, and the ball itself is where the head is connected onto. Pretty simple to engineer. What isn't very simple is how the arm is assembled. From what I've been able to gather, this is a ball peg that goes into the shoulder, and then there is a hinge being held together with a metal piece in the center, and then that metal piece has a swivel that connects to the bicep that allows the arm to go up about that high, and it can go full 360. The sleeves do pop off on mine on occasion, but it's not too big of a deal. The bicep rotates full 360, and you do get a double jointed elbow that can bend in pretty far, and a wrist pivot and swivel, once again using that ball hinge from the head. The torso is assembled with a series of ball pegs. There's a ball that goes into a double socket, as I like to call it. That double socket then connects to another ball on a stick that is inside of here on sort of a Y joint. I think it's either a T or a Y joint in there that allows Piccolo's waist to pop up, crunch that far forward and that far backwards, can go side to side and does swivel. The Y joint does allow Piccolo's leg to go down, albeit it is a little tight on mine, and it does allow for his leg to kick up about that high. And then there is a double joint in the knee, which allows it to bend inward like that. And then there is downward movement at the ankle, not too great forward movement, and some okay side to side movement. It goes a little bit farther to that side than I would like, but it can go side to side. And the toe can crunch about that high upwards, and once again, like Goku, for some reason can bend downwards. That about wraps it up for Piccolo's articulation. It's very, very impressive for such an old mold. Let's move on to my final thoughts on the SDCC 2013 Piccolo. Alright. As for my final thoughts on Piccolo here, I would say if you can find one at a decent price, this figure is absolutely worth it. The articulation is pretty good for an older mold. Paint job is splendid. I doubt you'll have any complaints with it. The figure itself is just amazing. It's eye candy. The figure will catch your eye and it will look amazing on a display. The matte finish really seals the deal with this figure. It really doesn't look cheap in a lot of areas, and overall the figure is just great. Again, do be warned that the antennae are very fragile and can break if you're not careful, particularly due to the fact that they are very thin. But on this release they are thin and rubbery as opposed to thin and hard, which makes them brittle. So I guess that is a welcome change. But if you can find him for cheap, like I said, highly recommend him. He is vastly superior to what I've seen on the Dragon Stars and Figuarts standard Piccolos, especially in the case of the Dragon Stars, even though that thing is 20 bucks. Good lord. But if you can't afford this release of Piccolo, I still recommend the manga one. And if you don't want to get the manga one, Figuarts standard is probably your best alternative. But enough my rambling. This has been Dib Games 420, and I will see you guys next time.